What's going on, F1 fans? My name is Alex, and that's Eileen, and you're watching It's Lights Out F1, and we're live today talking the Qatar GP. Did I say that right today this time?
You did, yes.
All right. It took me a little bit to get that right. Today this is the wrap-up of a triple header, and I was a little disappointed at the front of the race, but there was still a lot of really good things that happened, and this whole overall weekend was kind of crazy. What were your thoughts of this weekend?
Well, first of all, it was a new circuit, so it was the first time, so that was exciting for everybody.
It sure was.
But it was a very damaging weekend. I feel like for a lot of people, it caused a lot of damage.
I think a lot of teams figured out how low their cars really were.
Man, I'm like, we had 2 chassis replacements. We had
front wings,
blowouts, all sorts of chaos. So it was pretty crazy. But yeah, I mean, as far as the race, it was very straightforward.
I mean, there was some good battling going on, but it was definitely more the midfield and kind of some of the guys making a couple good passes, but it wasn't really anything in the front. You're right, Lewis had that thing out right.
We're very used to it being like down to the wire and super crazy, between P1 and P2.
I mean, don't get me wrong, it is down to the wire of the season.
No, it's definitely down to the wire for the season, but
yeah,
I'm like, we're coming off of, a season in the last few races that have been very exciting as far as overtaking, and it was a little slow at the front, but needless to say, there was a lot going on this weekend. There was a lot of drama, as expected, a lot of Sao Paulo discussion, turn 4, lap 48, and it bled into this weekend.
It did.
It was the conversation of the weekend.
Yeah, so going into the weekend, we still had some controversy, and I think we could even start to say that there was a lot of talk.
Well, there was, and so we're the big piece in between last Sunday and this weekend was, first of all, happy birthday, Christian. So on his birthday, Toto and Mercedes, requested their right to appeal the decision of, not looking into Max's onboard video from the overtake. So
yeah, we got to see it.
That was the big thing leading into the weekend of what was going to happen. And, in the last 2 weeks, I feel like just all the issues that have happened, it has taken the stewards and the FIA like way too long to get us an answer. So, it was like we didn't have an answer, I think, until the middle of free practice 2 or right before free practice 2 on Friday.
That's correct.
During
the it was during the
team
principals, thank you, press conference, and
it just so happened to be Toto and Christian.
That was set up. Yeah, so F1 set that up, and we got a treat, honestly, for people that like some of the gossip or the sign to see the tension that is, but kind of being built. See, back before COVID, there used to be a lot more people in the room, and there used to be a lot more emotions, a lot more characters that had microphones, and people could talk more. And so, we're kind of getting a glimpse of that with just, the 2 top teams right now, and with the battle being so close. We wanted to see Toto and Christian in the same room and have some people to ask them questions. And we got that this weekend. So
they set it up perfectly, but I mean, it came up in every discussion. It came up during the drivers' press conference. It came up during their, I think pre-race where they have all the drivers together.
Yeah, so the drivers' meeting as well, there was a lot of discussion about it.
Everybody is just seeking to understand clarity on what is the penalty overtaking on the outside. So, did we get clarity?
Well, if I listen to Lewis's answer, no.
It's not just Lewis, though. I feel like...
Well, then further he said...
So Leclerc, I mean, pretty much Lewis was like, everybody except for Max doesn't understand like the clarity of the decision. So ultimately, the stewards decided we're not accepting their, right to appeal or whatever. We're not going to look into it any further. So the decision stood. Max doesn't get a penalty, which, I mean, honestly, I think everybody knew that was going to happen because A, it's over. Lewis won. what else do we have to, talk about? But in retrospect, I get it because I know last week I brought up was it Austria? I don't even remember. The Perez and Leclerc one being very similar. The only non-similarity with like the overtaking on the outside was they didn't get a penalty, or they did get a penalty, but there was a gravel trap in the other case. So
Yeah.
would it have been, different if there was gravel? Probably, because, I don't think they would have been in control of the cars so much. But
I think that if there was gravel, they would have both been in the gravel.
Yeah.
And who knows what would have happened there. You're right.
But yeah, so there was, Charles was like, oh, well, if the decision stands, I'm going to change the way that I race, to whatever the decision is. And I know Lando got a penalty earlier this year, too, for a very similar situation as well. And he was like, oh, well, I shouldn't have got a penalty then. So there was a lot of chatter, but they're fighting for the championship, which I've been saying this whole time. It's not going to be easy, but yeah, it's been interesting. There was a lot of talk across everybody, but no one is more opinionated than Christian and Toto.
Yeah, so that really got us really into the weekend right away with just some drama, a new track. And so we saw practice one, a lot of the team guys still trying to figure it out. Anything major that I saw, the big thing for me was the curbs were a lot more dangerous than what they thought. Mm-hmm. The course was quite a bit faster than what they thought. And I heard them say that there wasn't going to be very much overtaking, which kind of turned out to be wrong. There was some overtaking, and later in the race and later on, we'll tell you, there was they had to work for all these overtakes. A lot of the
Well, there's only one DRS zone, so I mean, and there's a lot of turns, as we know. Looks like
Go ahead.
It looks like the hamburger helper man. Okay, like the symbol. It's got looks like a freaking hand.
Yeah. So we posted earlier this week our thoughts of what the track looked like, and it turned out to be a pretty good one. And I mean, in America, I would say definitely very accurate. Anyone that has hamburger helper type food, I don't know if they have it in Europe or
I don't even know. I don't know if it still looks the same as it did back in the day, because everything has evolved over the years. But it's essentially a glove, is what it is, with a face on it. Hamburger helper. It's like a pre-made meal that you can mix in stuff. So, but that's what it reminded me of. So, but anyways, yeah. So there turned out to be a decent amount of overtaking, in my opinion. Yeah. In the midfield, and Perez and Valtteri on the charge. So that was a difference that most people thought we weren't going to have. And then everybody enjoyed the track. I think that was kind of the good thing. So everybody said it was a lot of fun, and it's high speed, medium speed, corners only. So I think they really enjoyed it. So.
Yeah. So kind of getting through practice. On Friday, the big thing I saw was Gasly really being up there. He P2 and in practice one and in practice two. The bigger thing is we saw the shift between Mercedes and Red Bull shift. Mm-hmm.
Bottas looked good all weekend, as always, during practice. He's like the man in practice.
They set him up, really well, and I don't know what happened.
He was looking good. Perez, I think, in practice 1 and 2 was not feeling so good until the later part of practice 2, but Gasly was super consistent the whole time. And actually, I think in practice 3, he was faster than Max, which was crazy to see. So,
yeah. No.
Well, maybe it was just one of the laps. I don't know. Yeah, at one point, he did come in and he was quick, and he was, even Tsunoda was good all weekend too. So the AlphaTauris looked good, but
they did. Yeah, that's one thing we did see was the AlphaTauris definitely looked pretty good.
Yeah, which we knew going into this weekend. The Alpine and AlphaTauri were still tied 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah,
at the same points in the Constructors' Championship. So, it was kind of how is it going to swing, because both teams actually looked really good in practice and in qualifying. So,
yeah, and that kind of leads us into qualifying, I think, unless you got anything else. The big thing for me was I don't know. I don't really have anything more for practice.
I mean, not much. I think McLaren was kind of off, and
Definitely off.
the only other thing with practice, I mean, and just speaking to obviously the track kind of causing mayhem for the teams, was Mazepin had to change his chassis, so I think he missed all of practice 2. And then when he came out for practice 3, then he had an engine issue, so that red flagged the beginning of practice 3. So they did lose a little bit of time, but not a whole lot. So
yeah, and honestly, they really didn't talk much about the tire degradation or what the tires were going to do. I mean, they came with the hardest tires of what Pirelli has to offer for Formula One. Which do you? Let me ask you real quick before we get into the race or anything like that. You are in qualifying too.
Just ask away.
Do you like the way Pirelli lists their tires with the C1 through the C5, and then they have the intermediates and then the wets? Do you like how they do that, and they adjust with the 3 between the 5?
I mean, I don't really have a whole crazy opinion. At the
do you
beginning,
understand it?
I didn't understand it because I'm like, they're the same every weekend.
But they're not. They have.
But they're not.
Yeah.
I mean, they are. They're the same, but what? They're just like their PSI levels are different or whatever.
I mean, they have different consistencies, and it's like a different rubber, and they get more rubbier at a different temperature, essentially.
Yeah.
But back in the day, they used to be called
super soft
and ultra softs. And so there was definitely, it was a lot easier to understand, I guess, for people that are just getting into it,
Yeah, I mean, I get it, but like every time I'm like, it's white, it's yellow, and it's red.
Yeah, no, you're not wrong.
And then for me, I'm like, if I was a non-F1 fan, it's so interesting because I'm like, oh well, the slicks have the most grip, and I'm like, you think of a regular car, and I'm like, I know that when my tires like lose their tread and they're slick, they're not good. So
well, when you're in super dry conditions, and they're probably okay. You have a decent, you have different contact, decent contact across the whole entire tread if your tires are dull.
Yeah,
but
it's interesting.
But normal tires are completely different than racing tires and slicks.
Yeah. Well, also, I'm not a racer and I'm not a professional driver, so I'm sure, given if somebody was driving a car with bald tires, they'd be able to handle it as a professional driver a lot better.
Maybe.
So.
But yeah, you should never have bald tires around here.
No.
Anyway, so let's get back to it. Qualifying, surprisingly, Mercedes fast.
Surprisingly.
No. I kind of see what we're seeing here is like how fast Lewis really is.
Yeah, so, okay. I mean, kind of the talk of the weekend, too, and I think we kind of skipped over the whole Christian, and Toto stuff, but the big thing was, why are they so fast? And we talked about this last week with the straight line speed, so it was like all weekend. Is he going to be protesting because Hamilton's so fast, whatever? So I think right out of the gate, Hamilton was top of the charts, Q1, Q2, and Q3. So
looks like one.
Which he was pretty we pretty much was he sandbagging in practice.
I think he was just
did he have his engine turned down?
Probably turned down a little bit, and he's really good at dialing in the course.
I mean, he was after practice Friday. He was there till midnight, like tweaking his car or whatever.
Him and his team. Yep.
Yeah, so I don't know, but there was that with, why is he slower than Bottas? Why, Max was performing well in practice, and then we go into qualifying. As expected, Lewis is on fire.
And they also said, I don't know if it's true or not, that he wasn't even using his engine from last week, the new engine. It was an older engine. So it was one of the ones in rotation. And it makes sense because next week we're going to a very high speed. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. We're all kind of messing that up. I'm not the only one. I know. I've seen on social media.
I know.
And it's not just
me.
We
get a break.
Yeah.
Next
So
week.
everyone's getting a break. 2 weeks off or 1 week off, and we'll be back in 2 weeks. But that is what's going to happen is that next 2 weeks course, that place is going to be fast. It's new. No one's been there, and we don't know how fast it's going to be. And I feel like Mercedes is going to want to use that engine then, you know.
Yeah. The engine we're discussing is the Sao Paulo engine where he overtook 25 cars.
Which, again, you know, a lot of people on social media say, oh, that was the engine. It was the engine. It wasn't really the engine. What it does is it adds a little bit more performance coming out of the turns. Mm-hmm. And
I mean, they were already fast.
They were. Yeah.
They unlocked something on the straight line. That's the controversy.
Yeah.
Is it illegal or is it legal?
Well, apparently I hear also that they are going to be doing a new test.
You know.
And they're going to be adding weight to see the deflection, I guess.
Yeah.
So we'll see on what happens with that.
Does the wing flex?
Yeah.
We don't know. There's been a lot. We've been doing they've been doing personal investigations. Christian said that he is certain and that he knows what's going on. But then I think after qualifying, he was like, okay, they're about in line with us on the straights. So I don't really know. I'm like, I try to keep up with everything, but one day it changes to the next, and then there's something else going on. But ultimately, yes, getting back to qualifying.
Yeah. You're right. We should get back to qualifying. Honestly, I was a little scared that it was going to be a Mercedes 1-2. Mm-hmm. But Max was able to kind of get in there. But what we saw, the big thing for me was at the end there. Actually, we shouldn't talk about the big thing. It should be talked about.
I mean, hello.
There's a lot of people that didn't get out of
Q2.
Yeah, and that was probably the biggest thing besides the tire that happened at the end and kind of ruined everyone's second run a little bit, but not everyone's second run.
Yeah, well, all depending on when you went out.
I guess.
But anyways, Q2, I mean, the shocker was Perez did not get out of Q2. So.
I mean, not only Perez, Leclerc, Ricciardo.
Well, Leclerc didn't understand what was going on with this car. He kept being like, how am I a second off the pace? And there was a drastic from the top 2, top 3, maybe top 4 times to the rest of the group was like, I mean, anywhere from 1 second to like 5 seconds, I think was last. So, you know, Leclerc's like, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's going on with the car after he got knocked out. And come to find out his chassis was broken. So he had to have it repaired, which they did.
Yeah, there was a lot of chassis.
In dramatic fashion. They got it done before the curfew. So he didn't have to take a penalty going into today.
Good for them. Good for them.
But yeah, he didn't get out. Ricciardo didn't get out. Norris barely got out. He like just squeaked through out of Q2 to get into Q3. And then, I mean, the big one was...
No, he didn't get into Q3.
Yeah, he did.
He got into Q2, didn't get into Q3. He finished 15th.
Norris.
Oh, sorry.
I'm like, what? Norris was in the top. What are you talking about?
I don't know what I'm talking about. I thought you were talking about Russell. Sorry.
Oh, no. Norris, your team.
I know.
Hello.
I should have been paying attention
Better
more.
be knowing what's going on.
Yeah. Although, you know...
Yeah, so Q2, I would say it was a couple top contenders that we would normally see getting into Q3 didn't make it out. So that was unusual. So we had the mix-up. So the big thing going into Q3 was we had both AlphaTauris and both Alpines. And
yeah, Alonso, man. Looking good.
Alonso.
Yep.
Alonso. Yes. So they both got out, and obviously we already talked about it, I feel like a million times, but, you know, just a championship battle for them. Like we've been discussing how they've been tied. So they both got out, and then we had one Ferrari, one McLaren.
Yeah.
One Red Bull, 2 Mercedes.
Yep.
And then Vettel.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of good to see Vettel in the into Q3 too. I think
it was. He out-qualified a Red Bull.
He did.
And a Ferrari.
Yeah.
And a McLaren.
And he hasn't had the best car
and
this
an
season.
Aston Martin. Hello. World champion right there.
Yeah, I know. You're right. We're all fans of Vettel. He's a good human being.
How can you not?
I know.
Yes.
So qualifying kind of was weird. We got into Q3 with a couple people that was new to see. And the last round, last lap. Go ahead.
Let's just say, sorry, I like to interrupt, but qualifying is so funny. Like every Q3, everybody's got to go out at the same time. Then everybody's got to, I remember everybody went out and we're like, okay, first lap, Hamilton's on provisional pole. And then I'm pretty sure it was Max and then it was Bottas, but it was, closer. And then it was like maybe 6 minutes left, and I looked at you and I was like, all right, everyone's going to go back in the garage. We're going to wait until 2 minutes are left. Then we're all going to charge on out. And we're all going to go at the same time, which they take. I mean, and we saw that this weekend. You take the risk by doing that if something happens, your lap is basically null and void, and you could potentially be like screwed.
Yeah. And I think, chances are, especially, kind of going into the race, there probably was going to be something that was going to happen. We saw a lot of wings and a lot of cars taking a lot of hits off those bumps and off those corners.
The purple and white curbs.
Yeah, those curbs were pretty gnarly. And even what they would call like the rocks or whatever, those were pretty big. Those
they were like gigantic.
And that's kind of why the cars didn't really sink, because typically you go to some of the other racetracks and they're more like pebbles.
It's like dirt or something too.
And the car kind of sinks in a lot more, where this one, they were just kind of cruising over top. I mean, I don't know.
I feel like it was Mick that went out maybe in qualifying, and luckily he was able to get all the debris out of his car, but it was pretty gnarly. So, but yes, you take that risk. We saw it with like Monaco with Leclerc crashing and getting poles, so it messed up a lot of other people's qualifying laps, and then ultimately we saw it this weekend. So I'll let you take it away with lap set round 2 on Q3.
Yeah. I mean, so we saw a couple, Lewis was the first, and he put in a monstrous lap, really. Yeah, I think he was definitely the only one to hit a 120.8, and he was the only one in the 120s.
Yeah.
Really impressive. But
he literally said, he's like, I felt like I was flying out there.
But what we saw was
what we saw was
a tire kind of get shredded, and the front wing kind of shred that tire.
Yeah. So Gasly.
Yeah, Gasly was
I don't
coming
know
around.
who else got in a lap. I want to say Alonso got in his lap first because he had a really good lap. So he came through. So really we had Pierre, and then there was only the 3 drivers behind them. And then I think Norris was mixed in the queue after that. But the rest of them ended up getting through. But Pierre was maybe before the last turn before turn 15.
It was 16's the last one.
Yeah, so everyone was hitting it this weekend.
Yeah, it's on 15 was where everyone was hitting.
Everybody was hitting it. And so he came around, went too wide to the purple and white, curb, and his wing broke, punctured his tire. Pretty bad.
Yep.
So he missed the pit lane as he was coming around, and they, were trying to get him to come back in, get to a safe spot, but ultimately he couldn't. He's like, I don't think it's safe, so he just pulled over on the final straight, which the final straight is long to the finish line.
And honestly, it was kind of weird. Like, the flags were out, then they weren't out. At the time some of the people were finishing, there was no flags being represented on the screen. Now, whether or not they were being waved to the drivers, I don't know.
It was weird. I think a yellow flag came on the screen and then it went green because it was like he was
going back and forth
because he was still driving
Yep.
at that point. So it was going back and forth. So, and even the announcers, I know they said it today during the Grand Prix that there was flags being waved and they should have been able to see. They say in qualifying, oh no, they're good. There was no flags, whatever. They were clear. So ultimately the controversy was he pulled over. So it was yellow flags.
Yeah.
Bottas was coming in.
Yeah, Max was coming in.
And Carlos was coming in.
Charles.
So they didn't let up.
They didn't lift, and technically you should have, and their time should have been deleted for that thing because there was the yellow flags, and I think they were deleted.
And you know what? Now that I'm thinking of it, Max was last, right? To come in? Yeah, he was last, I think. But Alonso was right before him, and Alonso lifted. I remember that because...
He did lift, and he went quite slow. That's correct.
So his qualifying pace was his first lap, but everyone else didn't. They were just charging through to get their laps in. And I know that the FIA had to listen to their team radio to see if they were told to lift because of the yellow flag. And I know when I was reading, their decision, nobody had said anything. So just a communication piece and stuff, but ultimately it was a single yellow flag for Bottas and for Carlos, and a double yellow flag for Max.
Correct.
So
yeah, so we didn't really get any of the answers until come to today, race day, and
the important thing is, so we finished qualifying, and it was, as expected, the top three: Hamilton, Verstappen, Bottas.
Yep, that's the typical three.
Hamilton outqualified Max. It was the largest gap of the year in a dry race. So
that's right. You said that earlier.
Yeah, 0.455. So almost a half a second.
It was crazy.
Yeah,
it's a lot.
It was pretty wild. So they were super fast, and even Max was like, I'm happy with P2, and it's the best we could do. Like, it was fun, whatever. So he still enjoyed himself, and still put up a really good lap in comparison to everybody else when you look at it. Lewis was just literally flying around the track. And the joke has been that his new car upgrade is literally like a fighter jet. Like, oh.
Yeah, we've been seeing a couple memes.
There's been some funny stuff. But yeah, so after the race, we're just following up to, last weekend with obviously all the penalties and fines and people being summoned and this and that. Immediately gets announced that, Max he didn't lift during the yellow flag. So you're seeing all this controversy going on online. And then he got summoned for today, this morning, why we needed to wait until this morning, literally like an hour before the race. Kind of crazy to do that, but okay. So he got summoned, and then Carlos got summoned, and Bottas. So you go to bed. What's going to happen? And then, of course, the big piece, and they actually wrote it into the steward's decision, was Austria of 2020 when Lewis, had the yellow flags. And he was given a 3-place grid penalty for a single yellow flag. And so they tied that into their decision. And then Vettel in Bahrain this year with the double yellow flags. So in true consistent fashion, Max got a 5-place grid penalty.
Yep.
And so he was starting P7.
Yep.
Bottas got a 3-place.
Starting P6.
But the controversy was, is he going to start P5 or is he going to start P6? Because Carlos, is he going to get a penalty? But Carlos got out scot-free. Ferrari's, basically their, point was he had slowed down to his previous lap and wasn't doing better on that final turn. And when you look at it, it looks like he had a little spin, or not a spin, but like he
kind of just back end kind of went sideways a little bit.
Yeah, and so he did slow down, but it looked like he was, on the charge to the finish line. But, so Bottas he thought he was going to be P5, ended up being P6, so.
Yeah, so that kind of shook up the whole front of the field a little bit, and we were told that this morning.
Yeah, and so the drivers were told, like, I don't know, an hour before. They're like, okay, well, so Max is like, great, I'm not on the front row anymore. Now I got to start from back here.
Yeah, so that kind of shook it up a little bit. Kind of leading up to the race. So I think we're ready to start the race.
Let's get it started.
Okay. About time. So right at the start of the race, I think we saw really the top three kind of get away decently.
Yeah. So Hamilton's on mediums, and the 3 cars behind him are on softs.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh my God.
And then we saw behind them, they were back on mediums as well.
It was perfect. It was 3 behind Lewis on softs, 3 behind them on mediums, 3 behind them on softs. So it was a good balance. What's the tire performance going to look like, in the first few laps?
Yeah. So literally lights out, Hamilton gone. We saw Alonso kind of get away pretty well, and we saw Gasly kind of start to do okay, but he kind of messed up on turn 2 a little bit. But the big thing is Bottas didn't really have a good start at all. And Max had a great start, probably the best one out of everybody, and he really just went from 7th to 4th.
Launched himself.
By turn 1, he was fighting for 4th, and it was quite incredible to see that, because he was.
He said, "Take your penalty, and I'm gonna show you what to do with it."
Yeah,
that's what he said.
Kind of. So kind of came out of turn 2. Battling for 4th and kind of got in there pretty good.
Yeah, he was. The only reason he probably didn't get past Alonso on the first lap was because Alonso, either didn't realize he was there or was playing a defense card, cut across pretty sharp, and Max had to go off the track a little bit.
Yeah, they were battling for position right there, hardcore
Yeah,
for sure. And Alonso wasn't going to give anybody anything right then. Alonso was in it to try to get a podium.
But Alonso did get past Gasly. So that was the critical thing.
That happened still lap 1.
That happened lap 1, and then that's when Lewis was starting to pull. I mean, Lewis was almost 2 seconds ahead going into lap 2.
Yeah, right away. It was great. Yeah, he's just some.
I think it might be. I think it might be that illegal engine.
He's in a league of his own right now. He's mindset is, like he said today, he's the best shape he's ever been. He's probably mentally in the best shape he's ever been too, and it's going to be a hell of a fight. But yeah, back to the race.
Yeah.
Coming out of turn 2, or I'm sorry, lap 2, we kind of saw some things started happening. We saw.
So Max was like kind of stuck behind Pierre, I think, in lap 2 going into lap 3.
He was. It took him more than one lap to get past.
And so he's like, I'm kind of stuck here. Like, what am I going to do? And so I took maybe like lap 3. Then he came around and Gasly went wide. So he was able to get in front of him pretty quick. And then it was the next lap. He was on the charge to Alonso, and he like breezed past Alonso. The commentators are like, "Oh, Alonso's not going to let him by easy." And Max is like, "Do."
Yeah, he didn't put much of a fight for sure, and he got by.
He was way faster. So
and then it was just kind of those two kind of took off in the distance, and I don't think Max was trying to catch a little bit, but I think it wasn't really kind of happening very much.
Oh my God. They literally, at one point, and I think this was before the pit stops, at one point, Lewis was coming around to the straight, going down to turn 1. He got to turn 1, and Max was like, you could see Max in the distance.
Yeah, he was only 6 seconds at most. It was not that far.
But Max, when he got to literally, like, there was no car. Like, the next car, it was like
it was all
a good chunk of time. And so I was looking at the track, watching them where they're at. By the time Alonso and P3 got to turn 1, Max was at turn 6.
Yeah.
And I mean, the distance between them was, Max and Lewis are in a league of their own. And I think this season, of course, we knew that, but today, in the last couple of races, I mean, they're lapping like pretty much the entire field, which is, it's wild.
Yeah, it's getting up there. They're like, getting up to like P6.
I mean, it was what is it, a one stopper? Is it a 2-stopper type of thing today?
Well, so, that's the thing. Is the whole weekend they were saying it wasn't a one stopper, but some of the teams tried.
Yeah, some of them tried,
did all
and
right.
Some of them made it. But Max was able to do 3 pit stops and still finish P2. So okay, in a league of their own.
Yeah, but so at the front, it was just those two kind of doing their thing, and I always say to her, they need to be within 3 seconds. Whoever's, if it's Max is leading, Lewis needs to get within 3 seconds to kind of make a move here, kind of coming into the first pit stops. Or this time it was Lewis leading, so Max needed to get within 3 seconds, and it never really happened. So Max pitted first.
Yeah.
I mean, there was some other pit stops that happened around lap 11, which was kind of early. Mm-hmm. But I think as I kind of found out, it might have been a smart move for some of the teams.
I think the people that were pitting first, because I know Kimmy came in. He was one of them.
Yeah, I think he was.
They were on the softs. And Max and Lewis were on the mediums. And so we didn't know how long they were going to go. And they were like both punching out fast laps. And,
it was kind of going back and forth. We're like, ooh, it's going to be a battle.
Yeah. So he came in first, got the hards. Great pit stop.
Pretty quick. I think Red Bull is starting to figure out the new protocol on how to get this pit stop being fast again. And they're back, I
think they were 2-2.
Yeah,
which
is, a lot of people are saying that's about what it's going to be with all the new protocol that they have to do in order for the human to trigger the clear button or whatever it is that they have to do. And so I go, all right, they're back at it. They're in it.
Oh, yeah.
So, and then the talk was, Max was first, and then the debate was, well, is Lewis going to go long, or is he going to come in right away? And we saw.
He was 34 seconds, I think, clear when Max came back out. So, it was 20.
Very next.
Yeah, 24 seconds this weekend for, pit stop time lost, which it was such a weird pit lane, like with the turn, and then it's like really fast, and then you have to slow down. I was like, this is unusual, but it was the first thing I noticed about the track. But yeah, so he ended up coming in, and he was like, the tires are still good. Like I shouldn't come in. I don't want to pit, but
he didn't want to pit.
He still did.
But that's code for these tires suck. I want to pit.
Yeah, I was like, why did they bring him in then? And then I was like, is it because he wanted to come in? All the cryptic stuff. So whatever. He came in. He got his hards. He came back out. Max was, Max was picking up speed. His tires warmed up a little bit quicker, so they were closing the gap a little bit, which was exciting.
It just wasn't enough.
Yeah, they brought Perez in at that point. And Perez and Bottas were on the charge. We're kind of leaving that detail out.
Yeah, and Perez was looking good. He was making passes, and that's kind of where like the best part for today was, those guys were, Perez in particular for me was definitely doing the best overtakes. You can correct me wrong or tell me somebody else was doing better on overtakes, but I think it was him. And he was trying to get up there, and for a moment he was P3.
Yeah, and then it was the same. So, Perez was immediately doing well from the beginning, from lap 1.
He was.
I mean, Bottas fell behind him significantly.
Yeah, but then you heard Toto. Remember, he's like, "You can give these guys.
Yeah, go get them.
Go get them."
It's always like, "Go get them.
Go get
them, Valtteri.
Go get them. Valtteri.
Dang it!" So he was stuck in 11th for a minute, and then he finally was like, making
the charge.
Got past Tsunoda, got past Stroll, was on his way, and so it was like, all right, Valtteri, listen, you're gonna go long on these tires, and the battle for you is P3. So then we were like, okay, yeah, it is gonna be. It's gonna be Perez versus Bottas. Perfect. Yeah. Great for the championship.
Yeah, which
we're
is
gonna
needed.
really see it.
Yeah.
So,
So
he's the only one in the top 4, well, team-wise, Mercedes and Red Bull, that didn't pit. So he was still on the same tires. And, I was like, what are they waiting for? It was like Alonso was 20 seconds behind. And so I'm like, are they waiting until Alonso drops back to 24 seconds? And then it got to 22 seconds. And I was like, man, they need to pit Valtteri. Like, this is kind of crazy right now. They really need to pit him. Couple laps later go by, and I'm so sad for him.
Gets
tire. A puncture.
Yeah, I think he hits that curb pretty good. The tires are pretty degraded.
Front left puncture.
Front left. We heard that a lot today. Yeah. Front left. Yeah, it kind of went off into the big rocks, and he kind of
caused some fireworks.
Brought a bunch of rocks back onto the track, and we saw a funny meme of that, right? It was the sparks.
Yeah, it was. I don't know,
rocks.
Kind of dangerous. Alonso literally came into a huge thing of sparks from.
Yeah, it looked like Star Wars.
Oh yeah, yes, I forgot about that one. Yeah, it was pretty crazy, but thank God nobody got hurt from it. But yeah, devastating because he was in P3. Bottas was in a good position because Perez, remember, had pitted, and so he was back on the charge, coming back up.
Yeah.
So yeah, our first front left puncture.
Yep. So that kind of messed up Bottas pretty good. Kind of messed up his race.
So it was at the beginning of the lap, pretty much. He made it, nursed the whole way around. At one point, it was like Lewis and Silverstone from last year, where the tire just stopped.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my God, this is crazy. So he was able to get back in, but had so much front end damage. So had to get a new nose, had to get a new tire, obviously. It was actually a pretty decent pit stop.
It was.
For how much they had to do.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, it was fast.
So they nailed that one. Good job.
Yep.
Good job.
So that kind of changed his race, his outcome for sure. Perez was kind of still on the hunt at that point. Mm-hmm. And he had a kind of go through he had to pass people again with his pit stop. They I don't know why they pitted him so early, and he doesn't. I don't know if we'll find out. I'll find out later on why they did, but that kind of screwed up his race because then he had to go back through that whole entire field. He had to go back and pass 3 or 4 people again, and that kind of definitely helped out Alonso, and Alonso was right there.
They all pitted again.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we haven't even talked about that.
Well, go ahead.
No, because I think everybody, because of Valtteri's puncture, was like, are we going to be able to make it like 40
Some
laps?
teams got scared for sure.
On the hards.
Yeah.
And so first of all, like, you know, for the two at the front, they were so far gone, they pretty much had a free pit stop from everybody else. But it was scary, you know, like, okay, what's going to happen? New track, we don't really know. And we were seeing them really like hurt their front left tire. So what else is going to happen? So pretty much Max came on the radio and was like, the best I'm going to finish is P2. So I'm going to have some fun. So he's not going to try and save his tires. So he's like, let me just go. We saw him.
He wanted to try and push, but again, like he was 8 seconds. I saw a couple moves a little bit, but he never really got within 6 seconds. And
yeah, he did make some ground up, but it made it a little bit more interesting because it did cause everybody to pit. So Max pitted, got a fresh set of mediums.
Yeah.
Lewis didn't have another fresh set, so I think he went on old, like, from qualifying mediums or something. But
we saw Perez even, you know.
He came in the next lap.
Yeah.
And then Perez came in the lap after that.
Which, again, you're right. That was the second time. And I wish it wasn't so early because that definitely screwed his race up.
Well, it just didn't make sense because where it put him was he had to work his way back through, like, Stroll and Norris and
Ocon.
And Ocon. Oh, yeah, Ocon, the lion.
Yeah.
So yeah, he had to work for it. And I think he probably doesn't quite understand why it happened yet either.
Yeah, but you're right. It probably was the tire degradation. And he is one of the best to be able to extend those tires. And I don't think anybody was going to be able to extend those tires. They hit that curb the wrong way. They were going to get a puncture on the sidewall.
Yeah.
It wasn't tire degradation. It was the tire getting low enough to that sidewall getting poked, you know, so it was a different scenario, and nobody, even him, the best of the best on saving the tires, weren't going to be able to save that tire if it was a blowout, right? So
it made it a little bit more challenging for him, but
he
was up for the challenge, so he immediately was back on the charge, overtaking people, doing, you know, making moves.
Yeah, but he kind of got stuck a little bit, you know, behind Ocon. I think, you know,
he did for that second, and
so we heard Alonso, because Alonso had the most benefit out of everything that was happening, and he was in that third position near in the second half of the race and holding it down pretty well. And we heard on the radio go, tell Ocon to
defend like a lion.
It was defend like a lion.
Yes, like a lion. Come on.
And at that moment, coverage cut right to Perez and Ocon, and that was a battle. And
for a second, Perez kind of overtook him pretty easy, but then
there was a difference in tires. Ocon had old tires, and Perez was on his new set.
Don't get mad at me.
So, you know, I'm not the biggest fan of Ocon. So
yeah, well, I am. I think he is a great teammate. He's super positive.
He's a good teammate, very positive. You're right. I'm a hater of his style of racing, I guess.
Are you just mad because of Brazil with Max
from back in the day?
From 2019. Don't be mad.
No. Yeah, whatever.
Actually, it wasn't 2019. I think it was 2018.
Yeah, because I don't think he had a drive in 2019.
No, but anyways, he did come back and then actually try to re-overtake Perez, which, you know, it was pretty good. It was a little interesting, but, you know, Perez did get by pretty quick. I think during that time, too, we saw another front left puncture from Russell. So Russell was able to make it in, but we did see that. So that was, you know, tough. And then we saw Norris come into the pits, and we didn't.
Yeah, and you're right. No one knew really why, and I think it probably was just a slow puncture.
Yeah, so we didn't know. Yeah, we didn't know until after. Well, George, it was a full-on puncture.
But
Norris came in, and we're like, why is he giving up track position? This is so weird.
Yeah.
And so we're like, is the team just nervous about the tires since we've had 2 blowouts at this point? And then after, in his post-race interview, he did tell us that. He told us.
He told us personally.
Yeah, he called us, and he told us that it was a puncture. So, you know, bummer to see that for Norris, for your team.
Yeah, so there was, that.
But, yeah, so.
He did battle back. When he got a new fresh, he still got in the top 10 and was able to get some points. Stuck still behind the Ferrari. So that kind of brings us to the end, near the end of the race here.
It brings us to our final front left puncture.
I know, yeah. Man, that final left puncture.
Yeah, so it's only a few laps left, and it's, you know, Bottas had retired at that point. Something was wrong with his engine.
Yep,
so,
Latifi.
So it's going back and forth, the fastest lap. Who's going to get it? Is it going to be Lewis? Is it going to be Max? Is it going to be both of them going back and forth, battling to the last lap? So we're like, all right, what's going to happen? I think Lewis had it, then Max got it, then Lewis got it back. And so they weren't going to pit Perez because Perez was on the charge. So they're like, we're not going to take away that point from Lewis by, sacrificing Perez because he can catch Alonso still.
That was his goal.
Which Alonso, keep in mind, is on the same set of tires. He did a one-stopper. And so it was like he was on 31 laps, I think, on the mediums or the hards. I can't remember. But, I was like, oh, my God, what's going to happen for him? Like, he better be nursing those tires. They're telling him to stay off the curb. There's a lot.
Yeah.
We've seen 3 blowouts at this point. So then we cut to Latifi, who has a front left puncture.
Yep, and
he's trying the same thing, trying to drive,
trying to get around, and not really in the best position on the course, and
he can't make it.
He can't make it, so they have to pull off, and they kind of put him in a weird position.
Yeah, it was on like one of the high speed. The whole track's like high speed, but it was on one of the high speed areas where stewards were going to have to come out to get the.
But it was there for maybe a couple.
It was there for a couple laps, and then
conveniently there was a yellow flag. But they brought the yellow flag out because they probably finally got the crane over.
And stewards were going to have
to get out on the track, and so they did the right thing for that reason. I understand that, and. But it was just so convenient for the racing timing for everything that was happening because.
I know. I think we had 4 laps left.
Yeah,
and VSC, we got a virtual safety car.
Yeah, and honestly, so that kind of nullified Perez from getting Alonso. And I don't know about how you feel. I think Perez would have got Alonso. Do you think that?
Probably in the last lap.
Yeah,
I think so.
I don't know. You guys tell us. Do you think it too?
It just depends because Alonso's a good defender and so is Perez. So
it would have been a battle. That would have been
scrappy.
A really good battle to see, especially because that was the biggest fight of the whole race for me.
But we would have seen it would have been challenging because Alonso's tires were good, probably going to go. So that's
what. Yeah. So the virtual safety car saved his tires, saved his race.
Max pit again, got the softs.
He was eligible to get his fastest lap.
Which he already, I think, had regained at that point. But then it was Lewis was like, should I come in and get the softs? And they're like, nah.
There's 1 lap left.
And and they're like, how are you going to reverse and come back into the pit? So that was pretty much, the final lap. And Max came out, immediately was on the charge. We were racing again with 1 lap to go. And it was, I want to say 5 seconds at the start difference between Alonso and Perez. And when we finished,
it was 3.
Yeah, I think it was a little shy of 3. Yeah. So he was on the move, but maybe 1, maybe 2 more laps, or maybe if the virtual safety car didn't happen, Alonso would not have gotten his podium.
Yeah. So it was Alonso, Verstappen, Hamilton. 3, 2, 1, and definitely good to see Alonso finally get on the podium.
It's been since 2014, so 7 years. I mean, I think I saw this thing, and I can't even quote it correctly, but in the time since Alonso's last podium, Lewis has won 6 championships. Alonso has been on 3 different F1 teams. He took a sabbatical. He won Le Mans. He raced an IndyCar race.
He got disqualified from
didn't qualify for another one, and he did some rally thing. So he was busy during that time, but it was exciting. Everybody was excited.
Yeah, he was
great
very
to
happy.
see him. Great to see him on the podium. I think it probably meant the most to him out of the 3 of them. So
yeah, and it's it was good to see Alpine do pretty well, and kind of gave them a really good chunk lead.
Yeah, they're up by 25 points now.
Yeah, so it was tied. Now it's not.
Yeah, now it's not.
Now it's not. So that was pretty much it. Yeah, Hamilton just standalone victory.
Yeah,
victory 102 for him.
Yep.
Pole 102 for him.
All is balanced in the world.
Yeah, very back on the charge for this championship, coming down to 2 races left in the season. It's down to what?
Saudi Arabia, the Jeddah circuit.
Yeah,
Will it be finished in 2 weeks?
And I mean, look, the standings right now, it's, honestly, will it be ready in 2 weeks?
Yeah, it will be. They're going to work 24 hours a day. They're going to make
what
it
they're going to
happen.
show us will be ready.
Okay, so maybe there won't be like plants.
No,
and,
and look,
landscaping.
It's probably not going to be the same kind of crowd that we've seen in Mexico, in Brazil, in the U.S. for sure. In 2 weeks' time, it's going to be a crowd, maybe somewhat similar to what we saw this weekend, which was about 20,000. I think that's what they said. On a given day. So add that up over the weekend. There are probably somewhere around 60, 70,000 people for the weekend there. They got to see what was going on, maybe probably less, and I imagine Saudi Arabia will probably be a low number because they're not going to have all of the grandstands done, and it's the first time there, which is pretty cool. But yeah, I mean, the standings now, I mean, Lewis is well within the hunt. I mean, he has
back-to-back wins. The difference, it went from 14 points this weekend to 8 points.
Yeah.
So it's getting close.
It's going to be down to the wire on these two.
The Constructors' Cup went from 2 races ago. The difference was 1 point. And then they swung to 11-point difference going to this weekend. And now it's 5? Or is it 6?
It's
5 or 6. I'm like, I don't remember exactly. But it's
in Constructors,
pretty freaking close.
It's 5. And then, look, what I'm looking at right now is I'm seeing Sergio Perez. He's in 4th for the overall standings, and I mean he's in the hunt for possibly getting 3rd. I mean he's only 13 points away. So Valtteri's DNF this weekend really hurt him in his standings too, and it hurt Mercedes too in the Constructors' Cup. That really, like you just said, it brought Red Bull really, really close. And that's like the big thing is Sergio needs to kind of keep coming up with these 4th or 3rd or maybe even a 2nd place victory. Yeah. And he needs to be right there with Max. And this weekend there was a big difference, difference in I saw qualifying in sector times, and it wasn't just like milliseconds or hundredths of the seconds between some of the guys. It was half a second to seconds being a difference this weekend. And that was probably a lot of reasons, new course. And maybe in 2 weeks, we're going to see something similar. But yeah, so that was it.
Well, it's another new course, so we'll see because they're going to have to adapt to it, and it's a brand new track. So what's the grip going to be like?
Grip's going to be nothing.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting.
It will evolve and be better throughout the weekend as long as as more practice happens. But yeah, it's going to be completely fresh. So. And I'm excited to see it. It's going to be another controversy area. Because we got to see Lewis and Vettel's helmets, and I know Lewis said he's going to be wearing the same helmet in there too, and that's just about human rights, LGBTQ plus rights.
Yes,
and that end of the area is something that definitely needs to be talked about. It's kind so that will happen more. What else is there coming up?
Well, the only other big thing in the Drivers' Championship is that Charles Leclerc is 1 point behind Lando Norris. So. We need some greatness from McLaren next weekend to kind of close that gap. I think it's 39.5 points for the third place position in the Constructors' Cup between the two. And we just want Lando to hold on to that.
Here's the thing is, before we kind of wrap everything up, but yeah, I think Lando, personally, he has it. He's just got to finish these last 2 races really well. Charles and Ferrari have been looking good. Ferrari's been looking good, but I think Carlos has been looking a little bit better than Charles this season. And
they're super close too.
They are, but and technically Charles is leading in the Drivers' Cup, but I think Lando has the car right now to maintain a spot. I don't know if he's going to be able to kind of get up to where Valtteri and Sergio are. I don't think he's going to get 3rd anymore. I think that's gone personally, but I think he's got enough to hold where he's at, and he's going to maintain 5th and kind of beat his buddy.
It's definitely going to be interesting because it's very close between those 3.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah, and again, I'm
you are
a fan.
Didn't know.
I wish Daniel had a better weekend. We heard in the post conference that he had a lift and coast right away. And he had to maintain and manage his fuel right away. So there was an issue, I guess, with either how much they were able to put in or how much he was pushing through that car. I don't know, but he had some issues with that. Other than that, yeah, I guess that kind of wraps up the weekend.
And you said it was boring. Look at how much we had to talk about.
Too much, actually.
See?
So we kind of got out there. And that was the weekend with Qatar. And I think now we will be back in 2 weeks' time to go talk about Saudi Arabia. I'm excited for the new track. I know you're probably excited for the new track. High-speed street course. Let's go. Let's see it. So that's it for me, unless you got anything else.
No, just thanks to our new subscribers.
Yep.
And if you're not already subscribed, make sure you subscribe and like and let us know what you think.
Yeah, what she said, and any comments, good or bad, whatever. We want to talk F1 because that's what we like, and that's why we're here. So
it's gonna be an exciting couple races, and I know if you're an F1 fan, you've been enjoying the journey so far. So it's gonna be great to see who comes out on top in both championships, and I'm sure there's gonna be a lot to unpack. So.
All right. So we'll see you in 2 weeks' time. Again, my name's Alex. That's Eileen. And you are watching It's Lights Out F1, and we will see you later. Bye.